What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Carbonite Bounty BS with me and the nerds here. How's everybody doing this week?
Awesome.
Good. We are
Awesome.
good. We are good.
I've been looking forward to this week for a long time.
It is, man.
Long. It's almost been like a year, man.
Yeah, it's been like a lunar month since we've been together.
Literally. A time
Literally.
far away.
Time far away. We teased this episode so long ago. You know?
That's no moon. What is that? No, that's not a moon. That's a space station.
Yeah, I'm glad everybody's doing well. And as we said, this has been a highly anticipated episode for us. This will be our episode 4 review, but in most traditional's eyes, we'll just call this our Star Wars A New Hope review. So for most to understand, this wasn't 4, this was the beginning of everything. So this will just be our Star Wars A New Hope review. Before we even dive into this and go into all these elements of this fun movie, let's let DP let you guys know where to find us at if you don't already know.
Nerdcyclopedia.com. People, make sure that you're going on that site. You will find all our links to your favorite social media platforms. We're at Nerdcyclopedia on Instagram, Facebook, and also on Twitter. Make sure that if you are watching this channel on YouTube, you are hitting that subscribe button and also hitting that notification button. So anytime that we're on, you know that we're on. If you are listening to us on your phone or in your car and everything, and you love listening to podcasts, we are on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast, we are there. Most of all, leave us some feedback. Nerds at nerdcyclopedia.com. We love, getting your feedback. Oh, if you're on Facebook, join us on Carbonite Bounty BS, the Star Wars group, where you get your favorite memes and favorite Star Wars discussion on anything Star Wars related.
Well said. And like he said, hopefully you guys are smashed up the likes, and hopefully everybody is tuning in. This next series, as we get into more of the gritty Star Wars, the hardcore Star Wars, if you will, very great discussion points. All the way from the Spirit of 77 to current. This is really where we can connect with everybody in our community. So hopefully everybody is interacting on all our platforms and leaving us feedback, because it's really fun. But getting into this, some of the 2 questions I want to have for all the listeners out there as we progress in today's episode and all of our panel here is, first, we already know, I think, Ken's review, but I want to know what your review of this movie is when you've seen it. And then I want to know what your current review would be, meaning when we put it up against the new face of Star Wars, is your review the same? So those are some of the 2 discussion points I want everybody to kind of keep in their mind. What would your review be just watching this as a singular film? Obviously, we know the graphics and whatnot won't be the same as the technology is now, but kind of what your review is, and then what your current review would be of this film in a current kind of translucent or transduction of what it would look like in its current format. But as we get things started, we'll start with our guy who's been hyping this up the most. So, Mr. Ken, Mr. Moff Tarkin, what were your first official thoughts when we started this New Hope review here? What were you thinking?
So, this film brings it all together, and I think we were talking about it offline about the boardroom scene, which had so many elements that just. When I first saw this film in 1977, I was 8. And, all these things, they talked about the Republic. They talked about the plans. They talked about the Emperor. What the hell was that? What is all that? I don't know. I'll just accept it. I'll take it in. I don't care. And Darth Vader is going to choke this guy because he's mouthing off. And then Tarkin, who's me, said, Vader, release him. And what did Vader do? Released him. So there was so much in that scene that really nobody knew. And now we have all this backstory stuff that now the whole thing is filled in. So for me, going back and watching A New Hope again, which we didn't know was called A New Hope, we just called it Star Wars. Um, it just brought back all kind of memories and why I am here right now enjoying everything that we're talking about. I mean, there's so much there, and I think that, I mean, Steel City brought it together. I mean, he said, "What about that scene and the choke scene?" Because that was the first time we saw Vader like get down and dirty. I mean, he was doing this the first time we saw it. He was choking the guy, but he had his hands on, like hands on choking somebody. I mean, that's personal. Serial killers do that. They get their hands on their victim and they choke them. Now, here's choking from a distance. Here's choking, and you can't see what's going on. And I think we even heard Admiral Mata. I think we heard his esophagus crack at one point. And when I saw that as an 8-year-old in a movie theater, I mean, I'm like thinking, man, what is that noise? I mean, it was horrible. It was an awful, awful experience. And I remember that moment. I knew that Vader was the ultimate power, but then Tarkin knew how to harness that power. Now we know all this other stuff, and we know the Emperor was actually orchestrating this whole thing, and somehow he made Tarkin his patsy. And I know, T. Mitch, you're like, Tarkin was not really all that badass, but for me, as a human, thinking about this as being human, I mean, Tarkin must have been a very powerful element within the Empire, and Vader knew that, so that's why he stepped aside and okay, we'll let him have his rule because we know by the end of this movie he's dead because the rebellion's going to destroy the Death Star because of the plans, because of Jen Erso and her dad planted the weakness. I mean, that scene to me is the most important scene in the entire trilogy now because we've had it brought together by all this other stuff that we didn't have back at that time. And you have to excuse me, this is really an emotional topic for me because this is really what it all is about. And the way Rogue One, the way Rebels, the way Clone Wars built up to Rogue One into A New Hope really built this story together. And I don't know what the hell happened with 7, 8, and 9, but we'll just leave that for a later date. And we'll move on because I think DP has a whole different perspective, maybe far less emotional than mine. So let's hear what the Black Hat has to say.
Man, so first of all, I want to say that this is where it all began. It's amazing to me how they even pulled this off back in like the late 70s when this first came out. And I have to say, I'm very impressed, considering, the stuff that came out back then, and what they built as far as like the sets and the set design and, everything that came out of Lucas's brain and, his team and everything to put all this together. I mean, number one, it seems ridiculous on the surface, with these guys dressing in their costumes and, clanky Star Troopers and stuff. It's like, what the heck is going on here? But it's impressive the way the plot goes. The plot is kind of tight in the way it's executed and the way we get introduced to like the whole, the world building and everything. It's highly impressive for it to not have any type of existence before that. We learned that Lucas had like influences from like Dune and some Japanese culture with like the lightsabers and everything, and some of his samurai stuff and everything. But to all put it all together, because you got to get influence from some place in order to put your stuff on there. It's very impressive just the way it wasn't a lot of characters, but it focused on our main heroes like Luke, Leia, and Han, and then you had like your extended stuff, with the villains like Darth Vader, of course, and Tarkin, in there, and we got like explanation of what was going on. If you're just coming to this fresh, it was really a good starting point for anyone who didn't experience anything Star Wars related before that. Now, since I have, and coming back to this in different contexts, like Kim was talking about, this is like a culmination of everything that happened beforehand with like Rebels and Clone Wars and everything. And we got to mention in the Clone Wars in the thing. I forgot all about that. I mentioned, you fought in the Clone Wars and everything, huh? When Luke was speaking and everything. I'm like, oh man, I seen the whole Clone Wars. I know what happened, and then they keep mentioning like the rebellion. We know how the rebellion started, and where it's going, and pretty much here is like where it's ending up. And this is like just progression over a long period of time to the point of where we end up in Rogue One. They're building like the Death Star and everything, and this planet shaped, this planet sized weapon that is able to destroy planets. And it's a big thing. So in essence, just seeing all this, in a narrative from everything that I've seen from Clone Wars all the way up to, I'm sorry, going from a Phantom Menace all the way up until this point. This universe was built, and I cannot say enough about how great like the building of this universe is, just from this original concept with A New Hope. So I'm not going to speak too long. I'll throw it to Steel City, because I know he wants to get up to bat as far as this. But I thoroughly enjoyed myself watching this movie.
All right, so this movie is one of the best movies ever made, and that's the truth. I really believe that, and a significant amount of my life revolves around talking about the films that follow this in sequence. Star Wars is, in many ways, a really perfect iteration of the hero's journey. It is, it's a movie that drops you right in the middle of a world and then explains itself as it unravels. And it's a movie that has a lot of mysteries associated with it. For 20 years, we didn't know what the Clone Wars were. For 20 years, we didn't know this stuff. And I think for those of us who were, fans of Star Wars, I guess, in the years before and leading up into the prequel trilogy, these were all things that we were eager to see. And so to think about this movie now at the perspective of someone who's, has Disney Plus and is looking at this movie on, a modern television in 2022 in 4K UHD, to the point where you can see where there's fingerprints on Vader's helmet, and like you can see the little like you can see the texture on all the plastic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you can see the sets behind the sets and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's so wild. It's so weird to me that, like, for me, if there's anything about this movie that shows its age, it's that you can tell because of how good that print is that it's 1977. And
That's it.
There's nothing you can do about it because it really is. You just can't hide it. And I don't mean when I say shows its age, I mean things like the pacing is a little bit slower than you would expect from the newer movies, right? We see when Luke runs off to get in the speeder, he runs all the way over to the speeder and gets in the speeder and then leaves. Like, there's some shots like that are still in there. So, from a stylistic perspective, while this movie has informed a lot of what's happened after it in action and certainly in science fiction cinema, it's also out of date now. And that's okay. That's okay because it's 50 years old almost. It's a very, very old movie, and it's okay for it to be showing its age. But at the same time, it's still a perfect motion picture because it incorporates all the elements that you want in entertainment, which is action, excitement, suspense, mystery, and weird romance. Everything
Very
else.
weird.
So for me, I make fun of Ken sometimes because he's so enthusiastic about everything. But for me, this really is a Ken out of Ken situation. Like I don't know what I would put in this except to make it maybe longer. I noticed this time also the John Williams score in certain places that I don't know that I've noticed it before, like during the trench run and during the attack on the Death Star specifically. The score there was just like I could feel it really grabbing me and putting me into the moment, right? Obviously, we've talked ad nauseum about all these things because they are subsequently have become Star Wars tropes because they are as, they're as emphatic, they're as tightly linked to Star Wars in our minds as they are. Something as simple as the opening music in a crawl is now iconic. Every single piece of this motion picture, I think, is sort of a trope of itself now, right? It's almost tied into self-parody to the point where, Mel Brooks made a movie that was basically a parody of this, right? So
you can see so many things spin off of this. I mean, so many people, so much content was based off this, and you see all the tropes began right there.
Yeah.
And if Mel Brooks thought that this was important enough to do something with, to make a franchise from Spaceballs, and to almost be profane about the whole thing, it was important. Absolutely.
Mel Brooks only lampoons the important stuff in culture, like Frankenstein and this.
Absolutely. Young Frankenstein, Star Wars, Spaceballs. He only deals with the things that really are going to make him money.
And when you think about the monolithic cultural, almost religiosity of this, we talk about, this being the second generation of Star Wars, and I compare it to the Acts of the Apostles. It's no joke. And like for Ken, I'm not old enough that I remember a world before Star Wars because it doesn't exist for me. Because I was born, I think, 5 months after Jedi came out, right? So for me, it's always existed. I can only imagine what it was like where the only place Star Wars was in the theater, right? Now Star Wars is like everywhere. It's kind of weird.
Like all over the place and everything. Shout out to some people who joined us in the chat there, the Comic Vet, and also TM Nerdy Travis. I know them from on Instagram and everything. I mean, they're big comic, collectors and all that stuff. So thanks to guys for joining, and appreciate your station, as they say. So if you got some comments on our, the Star Wars chat, feed them into the comments and everything. And we'll put them up on screen.
We want live interaction. We want to be talking to you, right?
But I loved even all the little things, like Han Chewie's head a bunch of times, like when they pull out of the smuggling things and Han's tossing his head. There's just so many great little details in this movie that I if you haven't watched it for a while, you kind of forget. So it was a really enjoyable watch through for me.
Yeah, and I agree with everybody has said. I mean, for me, Star Wars was really my first journey. Being born, and I'll just give you, born in '85. This was my first journey and really first love into sci-fi. I mean, this is all I remember as far as science fiction. As I grew up, my parents were big into kung fu, so a lot of Bruce Lee, Shaolin type things, and I saw the elements in there. We talk about the John Williams score. A lot of those newer early '90s or late '80s kung fu films adopted that kind of theatrical score during the fight scenes from Star Wars. You look at the newer Bruce Lee films. The crawl was adopted in a lot of Shaolin, a lot of kung fu flicks from Star Wars. So that element was always there. That he was always an innovator in film culture. When he took from one culture and he allowed other people to adopt. As we see in this current day and age, you don't see production studios sharing knowledge. I believe that the Star Wars, Skywalker Ranch is the only company that allows people to use that technology, as we discussed, with some of the newer shows, as far as how they do that moving set and everything they're doing with the Mandalorian, these newer mediums for delivering studio work, in a smaller setting. So Star Wars and George Lucas has always been innovative. I won't go into as much detail as we guys discussed as far as my true thoughts on it, because I echo everything everybody said. The one thing I'll say that stood out to me that is almost it's emotional, that it's 45 years, and when I think about Star Wars being 45 years old, it's amazing that it's not lost its lust. It's thriving more than ever, but if we go over any kind of movie franchise, nothing's lasting 45 years. Big fan of the MCU. The MCU is not going to last 45 years. And growing like this, come on. I mean, this it's ridiculous. You see, the only thing that's been stretched out this far as you would see is a couple horror franchises. You might see your Jasons, your Freddys, Michael Myers, things like that. And even those films, if we really compare, on another channel maybe, they don't translate to this day and age. So for this to be 45 years old, to be this relevant, and to continually grow with this same story, I mean, how can you tell a story over 45 years and still attached? We've seen movies within a 6-year period, even sooner, that can't even attach.
Yeah.
So it's really a testament, I feel like, to George Lucas's vision. Everybody along the path with him, but it's truly amazing watching this again, just to kind of understand, and just to think, as Ken said time and time again, this was only like a trial movie. Like, this was only supposed to be a one and done. He never thought that he was getting a second shot. He was going to roll this out, and he wrote this script that he thought that, hey, what the hell, I'll throw this one movie. And now we see, 45 years later, this script is ever evolving, and there was a lot more to the story that he let on. So,
and there's like 1 billion pages of it.
Exactly.
And it just keeps building. And you know what? So when I saw it for the first time, the scene that most impacted me, I know we talked about the boardroom scene, but because that links everything, right? That boardroom scene links everything that we now know, the Republic, the plans, the whole rebellion thing. But when that door blew open at the beginning of that movie, I didn't know whether that guy was bad or good. Maybe the rebels were the bad guys, because here was this incredible power, this giant triangle that took over this small little ship and captured it and blew open the door. And I didn't know they were stormtroopers. I just thought they were just like soldiers, whatever. Maybe they were the good guys. And this dark thing that came through the door, that was good. That was the good guy. I mean, honestly, I was conflicted, because I thought maybe they, here was the protector trying to save somebody, and here were these humans that were the bad guy. I mean, I don't know. I throw that out there on the floor, and I know that dark is usually construed as bad, but in my world, that could be good too.
Well, they had white stormtroopers. The stormtroopers were white, so you didn't know, and it's amazing that they started off the movie with that, because 20 minutes in, we don't even get to our hero until 20 minutes into the movie.
Exactly. And could you do that today?
No,
you couldn't do that today, because people would blow you off the air, because they would think, oh well, you're stereotyping, but blah 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 blah.
But you know what I was thinking, Ken? I was thinking that when you watch movies back from like the 70s and everything, like back from then, when it wasn't a lot of competition for attention and everything, a lot of the movies were like a lot slower paced. So you like Steel City was talking about, the pacing there was you could see the stark difference between that and how movies are made nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep it moving. Because there's so much command for our attention nowadays with stuff. You have to keep it moving. Back then, you didn't have a lot of competition. Star Wars was the only thing of its kind, so he had the luxury of just presenting his story any way he wanted to do.
And yeah, you made a good point about that, DP. I mean, at the time when this came out, like you said, it was really it was a shot in the dark. It was something totally different. And now we see, as I say, 45 years later, that literally all of Hollywood had their eyes on this one film. Mm-hmm. Who would have thought that everybody, when we look at all these other stories, these spin-offs of this, what happens when you put a story together and you're innovative? I mean, we see a lot of this newer stuff, and like we talk about, it's regurgitated of the same script of maybe 3 or 4 different films, right? It's all based off of 3 or 4 films over this last 50 years. So it's crazy how when you, and this is just to maybe all directors, as it's funny when you guys are actually innovative and go with your ideas, how big something can be. I mean, you see the Tolkiens of the world, the J.K. Rowlings of the world, their stories. When you're innovative, look at the audience that J.K. Rowling's got with the Potter. Tolkien has had. They were innovators in their own story. But then you have these other people who come along, and we won't say any names, but they, basically bite off of a script that's already been written. And it's like, we've seen this movie so many times. I've seen this movie. I know the ending. I know the story. Hitch just said it on, some of our other nerd theories. We know what's going to happen, In this movie, we're discussing 10 minutes in. We don't even know who the hell the bad guy is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? We have no clue who the hell the bad guy is.
It could be either side. We don't know.
Yeah.
You're part of a rebel alliance and a traitor. Hey, that could be legit. That could be super legit. Maybe she is part of a rebel alliance and a traitor.
A traitor. We got to take the character's word for it because that's what they told
maybe
her.
Not.
Frank, let's be
maybe
frank.
she's the aggressor.
She literally is. He's right. Like, let's not. And remember, we just watched Rogue One last week, so we know he knows he's right. Remember, this is a bold-faced lie to his face, and he just watched you leave the battlefield. Watched you leave, and you're saying we're part of a diplomatic mission. And he's just like, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. I remember thinking about that last week, and I was right. It was really funny because we know Vader knows they're lying.
Diplomatic mission with weapons, right? You're running around blasting back.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Yeah. And think about the other franchises that came out. Terminator, Aliens. I mean, they all had first episodes, and they had to sort of build on themselves. So Star Wars was really a catalyst for that, because we didn't know, like Terminator. You didn't know. Maybe Arnold was the good guy. We really didn't know. So there was a lot that I think a lot of other storylines kind of took the Star Wars
model
theme, mantra, and built on it and said, we're going to confuse these people. We're going to make them think, well, is the good person really good? Is the bad person really bad? Are we going to twist that every time you come out with another movie? I mean, you had Terminator, you had Aliens.
Yeah.
Total Recall.
Yeah, Total Recall. I mean,
all the Paul Verhoeven stuff. I mean, there's a lot of movies that would never have possibly been existed. I think a lot of the Philip K. Dick adaptations that we got in the 80s, like Blade Runner, never would have been without. And Harrison Ford obviously never would have been movie, right?
Yeah.
He never would have been anything. And so, obviously Indiana Jones never happens without this movie. The Matrix never happens without these movies. So to bring up the example that I'm sure T. Mitch was actually thinking of when he was thinking of a failure that didn't catch. The MCU is in many ways based on, was predicated on the prequel trilogy, which was, an outcropping of this, understanding that we could continue that story. And if we talk about the longevity of this story, Luke Skywalker, played by this dude, showed up on TV last, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Right.
So it's not, when I say these funny things, you can tell that the haircuts and stuff and some of the budget, it's 1977, but it's literally the same story. You know what I mean? Under the same token, there's urgently not a need to redo this. There will not be a need to do that.
I'm very, very impressed with the chemistry of the three. They however, whoever cast them and however they put them together, they just have amazing chemistry. And Han is sort of like the catalyst, between the three and everything, because he has his banter and ways with Luke. Luke is not afraid to say certain things to Han, and Han goes back and forth with him. And then Leia comes into the scene. She's like, "Who the hell are you?" Chewie. Yeah, Chewie. They come into the scene and everything, and Han is going back and forth with the princess, Mr. Princess and everything. So, just straight up mocking her. But, they're the chemistry. I mean, I could get a Han and Leia show just to see how they their relationship just develops and stuff, throughout their years and everything, and how they go, from the point of where they began to like, how they have, what has it been, how
Twins.
up to
Twins.
Ben was, huh?
They have twins.
Yeah, well, yeah, when they had the twins,
There were actually 3.
Right.
the triplets. Oh my god.
No. They had a younger one.
Okay.
And none of them were named Ben, by the way.
That's correct.
Okay. Oh man. See, now that's where you guys' expertise, comes in. But I just love like their chemistry. I mean, you got like, the comic relief is Han Solo, and as I'm just watching him, I'm thinking how Alden actually did a pretty good job, being cast as him in the Solo movie. How his personality, I can see that back and forth, with him and if they ever recast Leia or whatever, how that would work, because he's really doing a really good Harrison Ford to me, in that movie right there, and I see where it all like comes from, because I mean, you're happy to see every time Han comes on screen, because I mean he's sort of dissipating everything, making everything like not like a joke, but just sort of like, calm in the room.
He's smooth.
Yeah.
Smooth.
Yeah.
He's the older brother, right?
Yeah.
He's the older brother everybody wants. He tells him what he says, try to lift their hyperspace hand like Dustin Crops, boy, and smacks him. Like, that's just like, it's classic older brother stuff. He wants to be in charge, you know what I mean? He wants to be acting. He wants to be moving and doing. I love that line where he's talking to the guys over the mic in the detention center, where he goes, how are you? And then he's like, then he makes a face like, ooh, and then he just shoots.
And that built on a lot of the comic, like, script writing that was through the entire, and they try and do it now. They do it now. I don't mean try. They do it in Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian. They do build that sort of comic relief, kind of one-liner script writing that made Star Wars so popular. Like in Empire Strikes Back. Okay, I'm jumping ahead, but Leia says, "I love you." I know.
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert! We got to put that across. Spoiler alert for those who have never seen.
But that's part of this. That's part of this
Yeah.
for me, and that's why this has been so. Even in the new prequel, like the postquel, I don't even know how to say that. 7, 8, 9. They did do that with Rey and BB-8, and she had a lot of like little one-liners with them. But that's part of this whole thing. That's part of why Star Wars is Star Wars, because it's human. And when the chips are down, what do? You make a joke, because that's what the human thing is to do. You make a joke. You make light of what's going on, so you can push through.
Yeah.
Push through, and you make the best of the situation. And I think, I mean, by far, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Dave Prowse were the best at it, because they were new at it.
Yeah.
They were new. This was all new. And I'll tell you what, I'll just mention Anthony Daniels. His birthday was yesterday. Happy birthday. I think he's like 6,000 years old or something. I don't know.
He was at the same Penguin game I was at a couple years ago.
Was he?
Yeah, there was a Star Wars night. It was just like, I don't know, like 3, 4, 5 years. It was way a long time ago, because of,
And he was there, and he's
riding the Zamboni,
he's the hinge pin in all of this.
Yeah.
The entire Star Wars trilogy, everything. Anthony Daniels, C-3PO, is the connecting rod between everything.
Yeah. It's amazing when you look at this movie how simple it is, and how easy to digest. The concepts, the tropes that that we were talking about, and not to say it's like just for kids and everything, because obviously you got so many adults that are just super into this and everything.
Nerd.
But right, But in the essence of it is, if I want to use the word term childlike, is it is what it is. It's easy to take in. The concepts are easy to understand. You got to listen to your heart. Listen to your gut. Go with your feelings and everything. There was a lot of that, especially in like the fighter scenes and everything later in the movie. But listen to your feelings. Go with your gut. Be true to yourself and everything. Stuff that on a human level, like you were talking about, Ken, you could just relate to. It's amazing how you got fans of this whole thing that have really taken to heart a lot of stuff, from this. And I don't know, but just looking at this, maybe they've taken it too much. Just they've been so excited about the product when they grow older and actually more, get more mature, they read a little bit too much in a lot of things when in essence it's really for the kids, and I think that's what Lucas was trying to convey when he was doing the prequel stuff. He's like, y'all trying to read so much into this, but at the end of the day, it's still for kids. But
Yep.
But a lot of us are just
grown men spending an hour a week.
I know it's just all
Talking about a
absolutely-
children's book. Talking about a Dr. Seuss novel.
I said, yeah,
Bunch of grown men
really
talking
right.
about Dr. Seuss.
But they've introduced so much world building in it that made everyone so interested in it, and just kept building on the worlds of time. Think about how Thrawn comes from this, A New Hope. How does that even happen?
Well, that's the adult influence, because now it needed to be more, right? So we had the story, and it was very simple, childlike, dark against light. Yep. And you had the Jedi Knights, and you had the Rebellion, and you had Darth Vader, and he was the one that we could focus our hate on. And as we learned more about him, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, we learned all this crazy stuff about him and his son and his daughter. Now we have this whole huge world that we can build on and enjoy. Now it's not about making a decision about good and evil. Well, we can like everything. We can like it all. There's no need to say, well, you got to pick a side. We have it all here and enjoy the whole story, because, bottom line, it's fiction, right? So,
not real.
Real? Maybe. I don't know. Is it? It's A New Hope.
And it happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So
here's the crazy thing: when you think about how many galaxies there factually are, there are so many galaxies that it is statistically likely that this is exactly what did happen.
And it's happening right now while we're talking about it.
No.
Hey,
And it also happened in a different location in another galaxy a long time ago also. So there are probably, like you're saying, statistically also multiple instances of this happening.
Yep.
Maybe in that multiverse that this is actually happening right now as we speak.
Something.
Multiverse. So, or as we call it in the Star Wars realm, the world between worlds. So maybe as we get into the world between worlds, we can go in a different. Yeah, we can get into another timeline and see this. But it's fun.
That are lucrative and pull them right out of danger.
Right. It's funny that we talk about this, especially in the late 70s, early 80s. You even have the story to where it was, Leia's kind of looked at as your cheerleader, and then you see her meet Han, which is almost like your, the cheerleader who fell for the bad boy. He's this swashbuckling guy with I can see him kind of like with the Firebird back in the day,
and that made Luke angry.
Exactly, right. She falls for the bad boy, the guy that you're supposed to stay away from with the T-top, so
Luke's the point guard of the basketball team.
Exactly,
Wait, did anybody know
he's both kind of Wombrats for some reason? That's a little psycho.
Did you have a yellow eye rock?
Come on now.
Yellow eye
Come
rock.
on, yeah, that was it.
Yeah, buddy.
The eye rock. I can just see that. I remember the T-top. That was it.
damn it! I had a Red Rabbit 5-speed.
Oh wow!
Nobody wanted to ride with me.
I had a purple Plymouth Voyager, so you know.
These are back in the days when you saw the Z28 and it was like something. You know what I mean? Like I don't think they do that anymore. But,
See, we're talking like Star Wars now.
I mean, how dated we are, you know?
Yeah,
Imagine we talk about when somebody watches this podcast in 20 years, like, what the hell are they talking about? You know, what's a T-top, right? What's a Z20 like?
It's funny too because Lucas threw everything against the wall and pretty much forced them to decide to make another one, you know.
Right.
So, you know, he put all that world building in there. It's like, okay, I got like a simple plot line, you know, get the plans to the Death Star and everything, and you know, see if they can save a planet from being destroyed by destroying the Death Star. That's it. But I'm gonna put all these other elements in there, like Clone Wars, Empire,
in that boardroom scene, right?
In that boardroom thing, yeah, rebels and everything. Like, what is all this? You know, I need to know more. What is going on in this world? What's happening? You know, Jedi. You know, the Jedi's were long ago. You know, are been gone.
Their fire has gone out from the galaxy.
We don't know anything about Jedi's in this movie. You know, for the most part. You know, you're Tarkin says you're the last of the Jedi and everything. Like what?
Okay. Not about lightsaber action, right? I mean, we definitely see that as soon as Obi-Wan pulls that thing out, nobody messes with him again. Nobody messes with him. Everyone backs right off. Like, oh crap! Like a lightsaber. Like they know what that means, right? It's like an FBI guy pulling out his badge and showing it to everybody. You know what I'm saying? Gets everybody's attention and everybody backs off. I like how that was portrayed. I almost feel like it should have got more attention. But what the boardroom scene, like you said offline, DP, the boardroom scene made very clear how far away from the center of the action they had hidden Luke, right? And that is an important piece of this movie that maybe I hadn't even thought about until you said that. So I thought that was very insightful because, you know, we're so used to being, and if you think about it in episode order now, since it's retcon, it's dirty, but whatever. We're in Coruscant, and now we're on Tatooine. We're so far away from the action that people don't even notice a kid named Skywalker.
Never even thought about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's one of those situations where, you know, there's this massive divide between what is the power and economic power of the peasant, as typified by Luke's family, and the apex of the societal pyramid, nominally here, the imperial governor of the Outer Rim territories, Tarkin, and the Dark Lord of the Sith, the crown prince of the Empire, Darth Vader.
Yeah, like how do you even tell that type of story? Because that boardroom scene, you know, as Kim was referring to, is very instrumental and important, you know, in the movie. And like I said, juxtaposed to what Luke is going through, just trying to, you know, get out of Tatooine. You know, that's a trope that's been, developed in other, you know, movies and films and everything. But that's a strong indication of, you know, this is going to be our hero. And how is he going to get mixed up with all this craziness that's going up top? You know, he's way down here, but they're so far apart as of right now, you know, and then as the movie progresses, you know, it gets a little bit more complex, you know, and then we'll start seeing that like, you know, in subsequent movies and everything. But it's just amazing how you just write a movie just like that, you know, and just have the protagonist and the antagonist so far away from each other.
And everyone is trying to get out of where they are. Everyone is trying to escape from where they are. So Luke is trying to get off of Tatooine. Leia is trying to get off of Alderaan. Vader, we learn later that he's trying to get away from the Empire, actually. He's trying to get back to his roots. He's trying to get back to his son. He's trying to get back to his daughter because there is good in him. We don't know that yet.
No, is there here in the Battle of Yavin? I don't know. I don't know how much good there is in Darth Vader here. specifically.
It's always there. It has to be always there.
Planetary xenocide. One of the great crimes of cinema history here, the nuking of an entire planet for demonstrative purposes, right? Although, again, Invader's defense, he did literally catch them red-handed twice, and they lied to his face.
Yeah,
You
twice.
can the temperature a little bit.
Right, yeah.
Where are those plans? We don't have any plans. Dude, I just cut down
Dude,
guys
they have the plan.
exactly like you had the plan. They were wearing the same uniform, the same hat, same
And
everything.
it was your daughter.
It
It was your daughter that has the plans.
Now, one thing I'm noticing in the movie is that I'm sure this is the newer version where some of the digital effects were inputted and everything. I would love to see like the original, because I don't remember that. A lot of
DP, I have it for you if you want. Yeah, I have the I have the original. I have the remastered they did in the box sets, and then I have this latest one that they've redone as well.
You know what? I have better than that. I have the VHS that was released to Blockbuster.
You have the Blockbuster rental?
Yeah.
Does it have like previews and stuff on it?
No, nothing. It just starts.
So you're the reason they went under. Thanks. You didn't return it. You didn't return the video. Now we know.
Tell you what,
Ken didn't return.
This thing is legit. You put it into. You have to have a VCR. Do you know what that is? I mean, you put that into a VCR and it plays and it just starts.
To be honest, I don't think my TV would be able to down convert.
It's hard
on a funny note. I don't think my TV would be able to play it.
We would have to commit a federal crime, but I can make it happen.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Say that it's possible.
Bring on the federal crime because I think the world needs to watch this.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, I know that was a digital effect because they didn't have that back in the 70s. So that was probably it's funny looking at it and know, but a lot of stuff they did input did play really smooth from what the footage that they had from back in the 70s and everything. So the movie looked good. I mean, it was shot well. The whatever digital effects they added in there, I didn't really notice. I remember back when they first did it, it was high controversy that they even made any changes, but I see why, because these things are going to last for like a long time. And you want to, but if you left it up to Lucas, he probably would have updated a whole lot more as the effects got better. But I see why he did what he did at that point in time to make the movie look better.
I think that the 97 stuff is a mixed bag. The Jabba scene is okay just because we get a Boba Fett introduction and we get, the rest of it. So that's the planes taking off. I thought everything with the space battle that they added in 97 really added a lot of depth to that and really made sense to me that they did. I thought the way, because when the planes are taking off from Yavin 4 and you can see the X-Wings leaving, just used to be some lights and stuff. Very rudimentary things like that they fixed. I think they added some stuff on Tatooine, though, that I can, you can kind of tell was like testing the water for Phantom Menace. That I think was a little bit less successful. But unless you really know where to look,
right?
I've seen this movie 1,000 times, like some of us. I've seen it
not me. I could tell, like, visually and everything, but it still looks, because I couldn't tell exactly where and what. So it all flows smooth to me.
How did you watch it, DP?
On Disney Plus.
Oh, okay.
So
you got to watch it on Laserdisc. You got to get yourself a Pioneer like DL990 and get the Laserdisc and watch it, because that's how you're going to get the vibe.
Okay.
Right.
Is that letterboxed, or is that 4:3, or is that widescreen?
Oh, it's widescreen. Yeah, so you're going to get letterbox. There's going to be like 3 inches of black on the top and the bottom, and that's the way the film was meant to be watched. And that's the whole thing that pissed me off, because I bought this giant TV, and they cut 6 inches off the entire picture. God damn you, George Lucas! What is wrong with you? Don't you know I have this giant TV and you're like making it like this?
It's 19 inches big, and I can only see this much of it, but it should be able to see this much of it.
So
Remember, the TV was 19 inches big and it was like 38 inches long.
right, it was black and white.
Area.
Right.
It was impossible to move.
Oh, yeah, you weren't
gotta
picking those
watch it in its original media to like see everything the way it was meant to be seen.
Right. Yeah.
I think
Disney Plus, yes, okay. You can watch it on your phone. You can watch it on your. You watch it on whatever screen you want. It's like this big. It's this big. It's this big. But to really see it, you have to watch it in the original. I used to have it on CED. Do you know what that is? That's like what they had at the hotels for porn.
The little projector thing.
Well, it was like a disc you would load in. It would like take the disc in and like I don't know, it was the whole thing. But you got to watch it on Laserdisc.
Yeah.
Oh, show's canceled, everybody.
Right.
Good run. Good run.
God bless. Good night.
Right. You know what? It's always been weird to me during this whole kind of as it's progressed, like, and this is being, I guess, the only picky part I'll have over this whole Star Wars thing. Like, why has Vader never kidnapped or taken R2 or C-3PO? Like, I've always wondered that now to this current day. Like, they didn't, like, his mind hasn't gone. He's lost his limbs, but he doesn't forget much. He doesn't know where his children are.
I think we addressed this earlier on.
Yeah.
He knows that's his robot, right?
Yeah.
He knows that's his, and he knows that R2's been around. Or even, we know when we go to the sequel trilogy, like, these people know who the hell these things are. I've always, as this story progresses, that's always something it's always been like that. Like, but is that the plot hole that, like,
do humans really care about droids?
The Emperor would have, I'm sure, by now.
The R2 though.
Yeah, the Emperor would have known.
That was like.
We talked about
droid,
right?
You think a droid is going to make a difference?
So, are we talking about R2? He's had the catalog, especially somebody like Kylo. Why wouldn't he have taken them and trying to download information, right? It's been like a plot hole.
Anakin put his life on the line to save R2 in one of the Clone Wars episodes.
Well, that was a long time ago.
That was yeah.
Hold on, so think about it this way. Like, we were talking about our cars from a long time ago, right? Let's say your car, and I don't mean like a car like your car from 25 years ago. I mean that car rolled by you right now. Would you be like, that's my car?
Yeah, I'd probably forget.
There you go. That's why. Because he's a car. And look, what matters is the memory. And if R2's not coming out and saying, yo, Anakin, I'm R2, how's he going to know? And the Force doesn't really work with computer memory like with human memory. It's a very different thing. So
totally different.
Yeah. So from my opinion is that R2's the one not telling Darth Vader that he's like, yo, remember when you tried to choke your wife and then your best
but how long does Vader know that Skywalker is his son? I mean, well, not how long does he know it, because I already know he knows, but how long does it take to figure out this guy here, this teenager or whatever, is his son?
Not till that moment in Empire.
When when you cut your own son's hand off, how do you feel as a father? We talk about Mando.
For Vader, it's the proof. It's the proof. What happens that proves that Luke is his son is he blows up the Death Star. Is he's able to use the Force to throw that torpedo down the pipe, right? That's super hard to do. It can't be an easy thing to do because we watched a bunch of people fail at it. There are otherwise very competent pilots and bombers and stuff with computers and all the other systems. So it must be an extremely hard thing to do. And then he becomes obsessed with finding it. The one question all of this begs is, why wasn't Vader able to find him before all this happened, right? Who was keeping Vader from finding out where Luke was? And I think what's really cool about the fact that we're watching this movie now is that in May, we're going to, I think, see some answers to that, right, with this Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So, hey, like we were saying, the the band plays on, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's questions. I mean, I do think it's still like a plot hole, but I mean, I guess if you got to infer logic to the situation when they didn't present it like that, then
Right.
I guess it is what it is, because that was never their plans, in the beginning to use Anakin as like this whole thing. I mean, I guess that's how he eventually wanted to tell that story, but it does present us some questions and stuff because of how close we know Anakin was with R2, in that whole thing, and when I mean, because you would think that he would know Luke has R2, and I was like, that's mine right there.
Yeah, especially when you talk about the 3PO reference and seeing 3PO, like
Right.
you built him, so you know what I mean. There's like that's still like your car. You would know your car, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's a certain rim, a dent on the back that nobody fixed, like
So no type of reference, but
yeah,
you can't really hold that against him because
no, no,
you just can't do that.
yeah, that's just me being nitpicky in the series. I mean,
one piece at a time, but he built you know what I mean? He built a Model T. Those things are everywhere. There's
Right.
are everywhere. So he got a kit and he built it, but it's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like he personalized it and signed it Anakin and checked and saw it. You know what I mean?
right,
It didn't say Andy on the bottom of his foot.
right, Annie,
And
Annie, Annie. I can't
another
believe that.
Disney reference.
Annie.
Wow.
That's the one thing about it. But
Shout out to Natalie Portman.
oh, right.
Annie.
if if he's more like a dog, I guess. I understand.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, right.
you would recognize a dog. So for me, I understand where you're coming from, but it's hard. I feel like just because there's so many similar R2 units everywhere,
Right.
so that's what it is. It's the anonymity of the content.
Right. And as we wrap up things, guys, for this episode, which has been like super fun. I mean, I'm glad we got into this. If you guys don't know, we will be progressing into the next one as well. So that will be one of our next, live reactions to. But as the beginning of the show, I discussed what you guys' thoughts are. I mean, I'm pretty sure across the board, at the time frame, we're all going to give it a 10. But if you guys were kind of tying this in, as I said, kind of, it's related to a current day and age. I mean, it has its holes, yeah. But what would you guys rate this, as a current film? Is it standing, as the mediums? It's kind of hard to say it because, as we know, they've kind of ripped from this. But what would you guys give it a rating now if you stack it up as it belongs to current films?
I'll start. So if I'm putting into the context of everything I've seen, right, from Phantom Menace all the way up to now, while this does hold up, the pacing is the only thing that will probably just throw things off for me, because it didn't move fast enough compared to what I've seen, just as like a whole binge type of thing, Other than that, it's still a solid movie. It still stands on its own and everything. The pacing is the only thing that would just detract from me.
Right. What about you, Hitch?
I mean, it's one of those movies that you can't divorce from the context on what you've seen and what it's produced. It's fixed as the center point of science fiction media, I think, in the history of science fiction media. And there's everything that happened before Star Wars and everything that happened after Star Wars. Star Trek itself, at that time, was a weird, nerdy, niche thing. Star Wars happened, and then they made the Star Trek movie. So a lot of the revival of even that film fandom, it has its locus here. So for me, it's a 10 out of 10. And even though there's some stuff that they could have done better, like the lightsaber fight, which we all know this is like a historical thing. The lightsaber fight could have been better. I don't want them to actually go back and fix it because I think whatever they put in would be worse than it.
Yeah.
So unless they were going to have done a different job in '77, I think it's fixed in space. But it is a 10 out of 10 for me. It is, in my opinion, a perfect.
What about you, Ken? I think I already know.
Yeah. So I still think as a standalone film, it's the greatest thing ever. But based on the way I've seen the franchise being sort of built on right now, I think they could have done more with it. I think Empire and Jedi could have been merged into one film.
Interesting.
I think they could have built that arc positive, in a positive way over one film, as opposed to making us wait into these little segments. Um, I think you had the sort of the up, down, Empire up, Return of the Jedi down sequence that you really needed for one, one film. But I think based on the way things were kind of fed to us back then, I mean, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to give us a little bit, make us wait, give us a little bit more, make us wait, and it is what the media is doing now. And all the things we love with Marvel, with Star Wars, with all the Disney franchises, in Cantu, all the things that they're doing, they're like giving us a little bit and making us wait. So they could have done it a little bit differently, but I really do love the way way it was done. I wouldn't redo the whole thing. Keep it separate. I can't wait till we do Empire, because Empire Strikes Back is really the one piece that is not affected by anything else. I mean, think about it. Empire Strikes Back, you didn't need to know about Clone Wars. There was nothing about the Clone Wars in Empire Strikes Back. All you had was Vader and the rebellion. That's it. It was very simple, and you learned about that in Episode 4. So Episode 5 is really a separate piece, and I think we're going to get into a really good deep dive with that. And then Return of the Jedi, they just needed to make more money, make more action figures, ships. I don't know. I could go on and on.
Yeah, and I echo you guys as well. I mean, I'm going to give it a 10 as well at the time. And keep in mind, as we kind of discuss this, as he makes these, this is really like a one shot for him. I mean, he's like, yeah, throw this movie out. Hopefully I get funding. Hopefully a studio likes it. Hopefully we can make, episode as we know at Episode 5, right? So as he's doing these two, we get to really Return of the Jedi. It really is like a kind of a shot in the dark. So,
My fingers.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It's really a shot in the dark as far as if he's going to get funding for the next one. So keep in mind where we are in this continuum. It's a 10. I mean, until we get to the third one of the series, which some people call fan service, but it's one of my favorites. He's making these films as this is the last one, which I understand, but he still allows the story to continue, which is exceptional. So
Amazing.
yeah, guys, it's been another great episode, a great discussion. I know we ran a little long for some, but this is, as you see, we're passionate about it. No, we love it. I mean, I can talk.
This is the original, so you got to run a little long. So
it is,
Next week, it's going to be worse.
Right. Next week we might have to turn it into a two-parter, like To Kill a Mockingjay or something. Hunger Games. This might have to turn into a Hunger Games or something.
We're going to split this episode up into parts. We're going to talk about the first part, then we're going to talk the whole episode. Asteroid Field.
We have to make it to a 20 film, 25 film, whatever Marvel continuum.
Boss for a while. What's up with Boss?
We got to shout out all the Turbo Man fans out there.
Right.
Get me that doll. I want the doll. I want it.
But yes, so DP, do you want to let them know as far as our schedule for next week what we're doing here, and then we'll wrap up?
I think the our next segment will be, whether it's next week or the week after, will be Return of the Empire Strikes Back. Can't mess that up, So when we come back, it may end up being just a two-parter, because I think we'll have a lot to talk about. So that'll be next up the bat.
All right, folks, you've heard it here first. So for everybody tuning in, hopefully, as our live fans said with us, it was a very enjoyable week, very enjoyable watch along. And until we see you guys again, this is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
All right, now I'm going to do it.